Now, the shocking stories of two abandoned babies in a week has led to a surge of inquiries from people keen to offer foster care. Many are attracted by the thought of caring for a newborn. But what about the enormous needs of older children? To discuss the challenges of foster care, we're joined by school principal David Sin, who has 4 foster children in his care, and Michaela Cronin, the Chief Executive of MacKillop Family Services, which recruits and supports foster carers. Good morning to you both. Thank you for joining us. And if I can start with you this morning, Michaela, it was interesting to hear the observation yesterday from our guest Andrew McCallum, who's involved in family services, and he was saying they were inundated with calls at this when the story broke of this terrible story of this child abandoned in the drain. And they were told, no, that child's fine, but if you'd like to get involved in foster caring, that'd be great. We have other children. And people pulled back and said, oh, no, I like the idea of the baby, but I don't necessarily want to look after the children. Have you had that experience too?
Absolutely. I think most people, when they think about foster caring or adoption, think about newborn babies. I mean, that's definitely where people's hearts often go to. But we have a whole range of children from different backgrounds, different ages, who really need to be in a very loving home.
David, you've been involved in foster care for many years now. Is that your experience?
Good morning and thank you for having me. Look, indeed, I guess the message that needs to go out is that it's not just newborn babies that need a loving home, but certainly a range of children across a range of ages, from a range of backgrounds, and you know, a diverse cross-section of foster carers is needed to address that need.
David, I'm sure when it comes to the children that have come into your home, different ages and situations, different levels of upset and trauma as well, are they in a difficult state, and is it difficult to get the family on an even keel and incorporate everyone?
Look, our experience has been incredibly positive. We have, as you mentioned, 4 children ranging from 17 and a half years old all the way down to a 1-year-old baby. And the experiences of each of those children is different. However, we've found that the consistent has been the stability provided by, you know, 2 parents who love and care for them, the consistency of you know, predictability of routine and school and just their general life, and I think that you know, human beings are remarkably resilient, children included, and I think with, you know, given the right circumstances, put in the right place with the right people, where there's a good match and there's that, you know, really unconditional love for those children, then they thrive, and certainly that's what we're experiencing now. You know, with the oldest one, you know, eyes firmly fixed on a career in IT, and the baby about to start daycare next year. So it's been a very positive experience.
And you're both very busy people by the sounds of that, David. Now,
indeed.
Michaela, over to you. It is the case, though, that a lot of the older children come from dysfunctional families, which is why they're up for foster care in the first place. But under foster care arrangements, have to go back to those families on weekends, once a month, into often still very dysfunctional households. How unsettling is that for the kids involved? So
arrangements, firstly, it's really important to keep as much connection with children's families as possible, and that's what we try to do in as a way that is supportive of the children as possible. They do come from often very traumatic backgrounds, and they do struggle sometimes around maintaining those positive relationships, but as our experience is, the children they've got the rest of their lives to keep connected to their families, and what we need to do is to help foster carers to work with birth families for those relationships to be as positive for the children as possible.
For foster carers who perhaps haven't been able to have children of their own and are seeing this as a good way of having children in their lives, is that a difficult part of it, though, to actually have the children, in some cases, maintaining contact with their birth family where the family is dysfunctional, where that child might come back to them in a re-traumatised state?
Look, I'm not going to say that it's always easy, but our experience, the foster carers who we work with and support, have got the best interests of the children at heart, and they know that what's in the best interests of these kids is to maintain some connection with their families, which is where a lot of their identities comes from. So we support them through those challenges, and often it is the foster carers who will say, it's important they love these kids. They really take them into their hearts and their homes. And what's important for them is wherever possible, where it's safe for the children, to maintain those connections.
And David, was that ever your experience with any of the 4 children you've raised?
Look, we have really maintained positive relationships with the birth families of our children. As was just mentioned, we believe it's an incredibly important part of stabilising their lives, and certainly it needs to be acknowledged that it can sometimes be tricky with birth families. But navigating that path, I think, has a long-term payoff for the children, with that sense of that connectedness, that feeling of knowing who they are, where they come from, and putting everything into context for them as well, and teaching them to be emotionally resilient and understanding of their place in the world and sort of and how they fit in.
Michaela, what are the lessons that as a society we need to learn from these most recent very troubling stories of abandoned children?
I think that what's really important is to provide early intervention support where parents are struggling. That there are a whole range of programs already, but they're often very stretched. We've got really good maternal and child health systems.
But they're stretched?
But they're absolutely stretched. So I think early intervention, providing support to families, because the best place for kids is to be within a healthy family, and if we can support their families as quickly as possible when they get into trouble.
Some commentators in the last week or so have raised the idea of, or reintroduced the conversation of adoption in this country, that it is very, very hard to adopt here. There are very few babies who are put up for adoption. That needs to be opened up as a viable prospect now for women in particular who are struggling with the idea of having a child, and that needs to be put on the national conversation. Do you agree?
I mean, I think that there are absolutely circumstances where, and a large part of adoptions that do occur, and there are only a few hundred a year in Australia, are by birth families, other members of birth families. One of the things that there has been a very strong focus on in Australia is keeping children connected to their birth families, keeping them connected to their identities. It's a particular issue with Indigenous populations to keep kids as connected to their communities as possible. MacKillop Family Services has a really long history of services that have supported mothers and children who have been adopted, and one of the things that the forced adoption experiences policies of the past is that it's very traumatic long term when there haven't been good practices around adoption. So when it's done well, absolutely it's something that's good for children.
We'll leave it there. Michaela here in the studio, and David in Sydney. Thank you both for joining us on this very important conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, and good luck to the families.